All right, here's how this rolls. I know it's the end of the day. I know I'm the only thing standing in between you all and alcoholic and non-alcoholic, to be inclusive, beverages. But the only way I can do this well is if I get good energy from y'all. I'm gonna give it to you, okay? So how we doing? Yes, excellent. All right, so first of all, can we give a round of applause to the entire first round crew for what they've done? Okay, and what a great session to lead into this one, Julia. Thank you so much. Damien Hooper-Campbell, I am eBay's first Chief Diversity Officer. I've been in the role for about 2 months. Absolutely loving it. Fantastic company, fantastic experience. Let's jump right in, folks. All right, so look, any halfway decent presenter is going to tell you what in the world they're going to tell you first, okay? So first of all, we're going to talk about the state of things in terms of diversity and inclusion and technology. Second, I'm going to focus a little bit on the title of this presentation, which is, let's dig in a little bit and figure out how we humanize this conversation that has become so popular in our industry. And then finally, yes, I'm going to give you a couple of takeaways of things that you all can do as leaders within your organizations, in your life, if you'd like to, that hopefully will be helpful to you. But, disclaimer. Number one, I'm not going to give you the solution to diversity and inclusion in tech, okay? Number two, I don't have any data in this presentation. This is all about humanizing this conversation and maybe taking a different approach with it. And number three, I know many of you are closing rounds of investments as we speak, but for those of you who might be Snapchatting, or snapping, those of you who might be, sending text messages, et cetera, I'm gonna ask you just to engage and to be mindful, as Julia just mentioned, for about the next 18 minutes, okay? So, with that, couple of housekeeping rules. How many of you, by show of hands, have seen Meet the Fockers or Meet the Parents? Okay, in the spirit of inclusion, for those of you who have not, let me just lay this out for you. Robert De Niro, on the right, he's the father of this woman. And in his mind, no one is good enough for his daughter, okay? He's a former CIA agent, so he's cynical about every single thing there is, doesn't trust anybody. Poor Ben Stiller, on the left, is the daughter's significant other. He's coming home to meet the parents for the first time, wants to make a good impression, but poor guy, at every single interval, he stumbles all over himself. There's this infamous scene where they're in Robert De Niro's house, and Robert De Niro corners Ben Stiller in the hallway. And he says, hey, Ben, we got this thing in our family. Anybody remember what it was called? Circle of Trust. And he's like, Ben, we got this circle of trust, and the entire family is inside the circle of trust. And Ben's like, okay. And he goes, but you, Ben, you're way out here. And you're trying to get inside the circle of trust, and I'm watching you. Okay? Damien, awesome, funny. Why do you go through that? Well, I tell you that one, you should check out the movie if you haven't seen it, right? But two, y'all don't know me. Many of you here don't know each other. And so in the next 15 minutes, I need us to do what we very rarely do as human beings when we first meet each other. Most of us come into companies and we bring our representatives. You know what I'm talking about. Most of us have surface level conversations. If we are politically correct in the next 15 minutes and we don't push the boundaries beyond the surface level, then guess what? The last session of the day, you'll leave with surface level takeaways. So I'm gonna ask you to be okay to be politically incorrect. I'm gonna ask you to call BS when you see it, and I'm gonna push you to go a little bit deeper. Are we okay being inside the circle of trust? Yes. This is like when you're in the exit row on the plane and they need the verbal confirmation, right? Okay? Are we okay being inside the circle of trust? Yes. Love it, love y'all. Okay, wonderful. So, if you've ever Googled diversity in tech, here's what you probably come up with. I literally Googled it and I came up with all these titles in literally less than 10 minutes. What's happened with this conversation that's supposed to be about people, it's supposed to be about something good, is in many ways it's become a bastardized, sticky conversation to have. Add in the backdrop in the United States in particular of the racially polarizing things that we're seeing happening across all of our cities. Add in the backdrop of what's happening in the UK with Brexit. Add in the backdrop of what's happening in Germany with refugees. And this has not become the most fun conversation to have. And it's not for a lack of trying. In fact, in my time in this industry, here's what I see most companies do. Oh, that got a little mixed up, so here's what I'm gonna do. Here's what I see most companies do. Number one, they throw money at the situation. They hire a chief diversity officer. They invest in tons of programs. More money after more money after more money, and they focus on recruiting. Because the media says that you've got to have a higher percentage next year of women, of blacks, and of Hispanics in the United States than you had last year. Or they invest in trainings. Unconscious bias has become the buzzword of the last 5 years. And training after training after training takes place. And in the worst case, many individuals who don't consider themselves to be underrepresented minorities, white men, heterosexual men and women, Asian men and women, Indian men and women in these companies, are so scared to talk about this that nobody says anything. Because they're afraid that by talking about this conversation, they'll be blasted in the media, or worse yet, blasted by the people who they lead. So what I'm gonna ask us to do for the next few minutes is to humanize this. This is not about metrics. It's not about percentages. Yes, ultimately, those are some of the ways we measure it. But what I'm gonna ask us to do is to throw out the trainings, to throw out the money for a second. And for those of you who have been afraid to talk about it, I'm gonna ask you to talk about it. And I'm gonna push you to do something in this room for the next few minutes that I hope you will do at your companies, especially those of you who are just getting started, because you have the best opportunity to make a change here. I'm gonna push you to have a conversation, not rocket science. So, let's kick this off. Now remember, we said circle of trust. We said no BS. We said no surface level stuff. So I've got a few people who are in the aisles, up here too, in the balcony with microphones, okay? What does diversity actually mean? What I'm not looking for is, what does it mean as defined by the dictionary? What does it mean as defined by what you think people want to hear or what the media says? What does it actually mean in your world? I need a few volunteers. There's a hand there. Great.
It means to me people who come from a wide, diverse of background and places.
Okay. Backgrounds. What does backgrounds mean?
Experiences, whether that's life experiences, job experiences, location experiences.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much. Let's go down here. I'm going to look for somebody over here in just a moment, so please, a volunteer.
Somewhat similar. We all have cognitive biases. We all have things that we carry with us in baggage. I want a wide variety of baggage. I want
wide variety of baggage.
Bias, right?
I love that. I love that. Great. Somebody over here. Can I get a volunteer on this side? How about up in the balcony? Anybody? Okay. There we go. Thank you.
It means not letting your culture be defined by a single or a few narratives.
Okay, great, wonderful. So look, thank you for starting to participate. I'm gonna ask for a few more hands in just a moment. Thing is we kind of get what diversity means. It's everything. Oftentimes this conversation is solely focused around race and gender. And while yes, race and gender are very important topics, diversity goes well beyond race and gender and should include them, but goes even further. What I'm gonna ask you to think about is this other word, inclusion. So what does this word actually mean? And I don't want you to do what we typically do, which is just define inclusion. For the next 3 to 4 minutes, I'm going to ask you to talk with the person next to you. If that means you got to get up and move your seat, please do it. And here's what I'm going to ask you to think about. Good, it was supposed to have that effect. All right. So what I'm going to ask you to think about is not necessarily inclusion, but I want you to dial back in your own life to a personal event when you felt excluded. Now, this doesn't have to be about race or gender or age or sexual orientation. This can be when you were 4 years old and you didn't get picked for the kickball team. This could be earlier today when you realized that people at your company held a meeting and didn't invite you. It doesn't matter what it is. I just want you to talk openly and candidly with the person next to you about a time in your life when you felt excluded, and try to come up with a couple of adjectives that describe how you felt. Go. Okay. Shh. Excellent. You're probably also engaged that you didn't even hear or see the buzz in the room. So I want to ask you to give yourselves a round of applause for doing it. All right, so here's the moment of truth. You all just shared, and I heard you, I saw you. I need to ask for a few brave volunteers to very quickly share the story that they told and how they felt when they felt excluded. Volunteer here, thank you. I see one up there as well. And in the balcony, if there's one, please let me know. Yeah, go.
That picture was me, but fatter. And I felt like a loser because of the things that I thought were important, I was really good at, but sports was not one of the things that I cared about, but it was a majority. It was something everyone thought was important. It was how people judged popularity, and so that was a very classic multi-decade or decade and a half, sort of recurring theme for me.
What's your name?
Avi.
Avi. Avi, you said multi-decade.
Well, I was in school, in primary school, 5 to 18, that's...
But we're talking about a long time
Yeah,
that
it
you're
was a long
dealing with
time.
this exclusion.
Yeah,
Okay.
I found other things I was good at to focus
Sure.
on, and friends, and...
Sure. Let's first of all give Avi a round of applause. Hold on, give him the mic. Sorry, leave him with the mic for a second. Just give us a couple of adjectives that describe how you felt. When you say, like that was you and you felt excluded from things, just one word adjectives.
Loser. And lonely.
Loser and lonely.
Yes.
Okay, excellent, thank you. All right, next I saw a hand up there. Let's bring the mic up there. Okay, we'll go right here, and then we'll go there next. We're gonna come up to you, sir, who's standing at the top next. Go right here.
Hi. So Matt, I hope you don't mind me sharing yours too. Matt and I, Matt didn't volunteer, but he's being included. Matt and I actually shared very similar stories, which is why I feel confident or comfortable maybe including his. We both talked about not such close friends, but also not like such distant acquaintances who had weddings recently that neither of us were invited to, and both of us expected to possibly be invited to. And so it wasn't necessarily maybe a deep exclusion in the sense that we just heard, but it still kind of was prompted almost a little bit of insecurity in the sense that, wow, maybe I'm not as good friends with that person as I thought I was, or I'm not as close with that couple as I thought I was before.
Your name?
Zach, sorry.
Zach and Matt, right?
Yeah.
Round of applause real quick. So you mentioned insecure. What else did you feel being excluded?
And yeah, fear too, which was what Matt just said.
Fear of what?
Fear of not being missed.
Wow. Fear of not being missed. Very interesting. Show of hands, how many people have been excluded from a wedding and felt that way? Okay. And show of hands, back to Avi's point about maybe your physical presence being something that's excluded you, whether it was your weight or appearance. How many have had that kind of an experience before? Keep your hands up. Put them up high. Please take a look around the room, folks. Okay? Great. Another experience up top here.
My name's Steve. My experience was in high school. I was on our high school soccer team, And we'd have these big parties over the weekend. The team would have, someone's parents would be out of town, and there'd be these big parties. And it was really awesome, except I would hear about it on Monday after they happened, and nobody told me or invited me. So it was always one of these things, feel left out, feel sad, feel unwanted.
Left out, sad, unwanted. Did you say Steve?
Yes.
Steve, round of applause real quick. Leave the mic with him. Leave the mic with him for a second. Steve, you're a grown man now, right?
Yes.
Why did you bring that up from back then? Well, why is that significant now?
It's the same. You still feel that feeling. So when you're not invited to a wedding, or when people are sitting somewhere else, it's that same feeling that comes up.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have other volunteers? Like to hear more stories? Yes. One right here, please. And do we have anybody in the balcony? Great. And one in the balcony, and then we're going to wrap.
Hi, I'm Caroline.
Hi.
I went to high school in Japan, and I was on the math field day team, and I was the only girl, and I was the only non-Japanese person. And they would literally just speak Japanese in front of me, like I wasn't even there. And so this reminded me of that, and that feeling of just like not even mattering that I was there. So.
Got it. Round of applause, please. And quick show of hands, how many people have felt excluded from a language standpoint before? Okay, take a look around the room, folks. All right? And then up top.
Hey, my name is Ankur. So mine is, it's kind of been a theme. It's about age. So the first few internships I had and the first job I had, I walked in the front door and said, I have a million ideas on how to make everything better. And immediately got shut down. And it happens a little bit less now, but that was kind of a theme of walking into things as kind of the youngest person around and getting shut down.
And how did that make you feel, Ankur?
Crippled a little bit and demotivated.
Crippled, demotivated. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anybody else before we close? Anybody else want to share? Okay. That's wonderful, what we just did. 5, 6 of you just shared experiences. I want you to notice something. Those experiences didn't necessarily have to do with race and gender only. Those experiences were about human beings, regardless of what our backgrounds are, who have felt excluded. What were the words we heard? Insecure, fear, lonely, right? Crippled, demotivated. Folks, the point of this is there are people who are working for you. There are people who want to work for you, who are feeling this way right now inside of your organization. Show of hands, how many people have ever felt excluded before in their life? How many people have ever been responsible, intentionally or unintentionally, for excluding someone else? Take a look around. Keep those hands up high. Okay? We've all done it before. What I'm asking you to do is not a training. I'm not asking you to take money and throw it at it. I'm asking you to start with diversity and inclusion by simply committing in your positions of influence to never, either directly or indirectly, allow anyone in your sphere of influence to feel the way that we all just talked about. Okay. So if you still aren't getting this diversity and inclusion thing, okay? This is not my metaphor or analogy. I heard this before, and I love it, and so I continue to use it. Diversity can be likened to being invited to the dance party. So you open up text, email, and you've gotten an invitation. Everybody in this room, balcony down here, we've all gotten an invitation to the party. Saturday rolls around, we got our freshest gear on, we're ready to go. And we're all in the venue, beautiful venue. We're standing around, and there's tons of diversity in the room, however you describe or define the word. But so what? So what if it's only the people in the room who were invited who are the athletes, who are dancing. Or if it's only certain people who are close enough friends to be invited to the wedding who are dancing, or only people of a certain age who are dancing, or only people who speak a certain language who are dancing, or only people who are cool enough on the soccer team who are dancing. Folks, my point is, diversity alone is not enough. If diversity is being invited to the dance party, I'd push us to say that inclusion is being invited to dance when you're at the party. And as leaders, the question is, great if you're trying to recruit people from diverse backgrounds. Table stakes, as one of my colleagues just called it. But are you actually inviting people to dance inside of your companies? Okay, so really quickly, at eBay, here's how we think about diversity and inclusion. And I'd challenge you all to get rid of the white noise that's in the media that focuses all of it on recruiting and statistics. That's a major part of it. And we call that workforce. We've heard it already. We've heard it tons of times. A diverse workforce helps with profits and business because many of our customers and end users reflect a broad array of diversity. Okay, got it. Workplace. How do you actually feel when you're there? Are you being invited to the dance or being invited to dance when you're actually in the workplace? And then this other one, marketplace. There's lots of research and studies out there that say that a more diverse workforce gets you more customers. But I'm going to push all of you to think about this in your business. What communities are you missing out on? What individuals are you not bringing into your platform because you're not thinking about it in a diverse and inclusive way? Couple of things I want you to leave with. I want you to try this with your people. Start with a conversation. We can bring in external experts to talk about unconscious bias all day long. We can hire a chief diversity officer all day long. But have you actually had a conversation to understand what diversity and inclusion means to the people who you work with? Do you know? Maybe it is about physical appearance. Maybe it is about languages. It's probably also about race and gender. But don't miss out on bringing people into the conversation because you're so narrowly defining diversity and inclusion. Make inclusion inclusive. This has become a very US-centric conversation. I guess that if you're not already dealing with global audiences, you probably have aspirations too. At eBay, yes, we're going to talk about certain things in the US. But what diversity and inclusion means here is different than what it means in Paris, and it's different than what it means in Korea. By having the conversation and hearing people and listening, as Julia said, you'll get the information you need to figure out where to meet people on this conversation. The other thing is, we've gotten to a place in this discussion around diversity and inclusion where we have initiatives that are focused on certain populations. We have initiatives focused on women. We have initiatives focused on veterans. We have initiatives focused on blacks and Hispanics in the US. But what good are those initiatives if people in the majority don't feel welcome in that conversation? If it's simply an initiative inside of your company that's focused on women, which is fantastic, but men look at it and they say, oh, hell no, I'm not going in that room. How are we ever going to move the needle in this conversation? And so I would push you to broaden the definition of diversity and inclusion and make sure that even with all great intent that we have to focus on underrepresented communities, that we're doing it in partnership with majority communities, however you define that. If you are at a place in your organization where you don't know if you should call Damien black or African American, get to a place by having a conversation where it's okay to ask that question. If you don't know if you should call someone homosexual or gay, get to a place where you can ask that question. The worst thing you can do is say nothing at all. I want you to find the business case. For every single person in here, it exists. You can drive revenue through diversity and inclusion. Forget any research study. Find the opportunity in your business model. And then finally, I coached leaders on Wall Street for almost 4 years. And the biggest Achilles heel that I saw was senior leaders who make a lot of money, who have big titles, is an inability to be vulnerable. What we did today, folks, is the real takeaway. It's not even these things on the board. In less than 10 minutes, we fast forwarded past the point of political correctness, past the point of I don't know you, past the point of surface level conversation, and talked to each other about something that we all have in common, feeling excluded. Whatever you do, own never, ever, ever doing anything to the best of your ability to let the people who are in your sphere of influence feel the way that you heard others talk about feeling today. With that, I want to say thank you and enjoy the rest of the evening.